Jude number 3.
All right, so we're working together through this straightforward text in Jude. Again, forgive my redundance, but just what draws me into this text is, maybe I shouldn't be asking what I want to do with the text, but rather what I want the text to do with me. But some of the questions that Jude raises that I'm interested in thinking about are the relationship between the understanding of the biblical canon and texts outside of it, and how those texts outside of the canon inform those within the canon. And secondly, the place that the order of creation gives to our activity and our understanding of the world, and our understanding of how we fit in it. The ways in which nature is telling us something about how perhaps we ought to live. So we were in the about midway through this one chapter book, and it's a particularly dense section. One way to arrange the book is that you've got his introduction, which is full of language like love. You've got a middle section that we're in now, which is incredibly dense and much harder, where he's doing, harsher is a better way to put it, where he's criticizing these antinomian teachers. And then what we'll see is at the end of the text, he returns to his posture at the beginning, where there's much more reconciliatory language. So we're in verse 8, and let me read just 2 verses for now. Yet in like manner, these people also, relying on their dreams, defile the flesh, reject authority, and blaspheme the glorious ones. But when the archangel Michael, contending with the devil, was disputing about the body of Moses, he did not presume to pronounce a blasphemous judgment, but said, "The Lord rebuke you." So verse 9 is the one we've got to spend a little more time on, but just a reminder, verse 8 sets things up. These people that he refers to are these antinomian teachers, members of this community that are literally antinomian, against law. So they're suggesting that God's law, God's order is doesn't have the grace we're afforded in the gospel means that essentially in our physical lives, in the flesh, we can live as we like. And they rely on their dreams. That is, they consider what they think to be ecstatic visions that they have, private ecstatic visions that they have, to be authoritative, and use those visions, these erotic fantasies, as justifications for the way they understand the world, the way they understand how they ought to live. And again, that's contrasted by some things we've seen earlier in the text about a deposit of faith that's given through first Christ and the apostles to them, that is given once for all. So they're claiming to have new and unique insight that contrasts what's been given in the tradition thus far. So that's what that language of relying on their dreams referred to. And the defiling of the flesh means their kind of libertine sexual lifestyle. The rejection of authority and the blaspheming of the glorious ones goes back to this question of order. So we've seen some reference earlier in the text about angels and angels falling and angels leaving their positions of authority and engaging in behavior with human women. This is taking that in a slightly different direction, although it's still referring to angels. So in Jewish thought, and much of the New Testament, you get this sense that, or it's understood that angels serve as mediators of the law. So you have the law that's given, and angels serve in a certain way as mediators. This is what the glorious ones refer to. You can get, if you're interested in looking at this later, Acts 7:35 and following, Hebrews 2:2 and Galatians 3:19 all make reference to the role that angels play in mediating the law. We'll see a little bit more of that this morning. You also, there's a strange phrase in 1 Corinthians when Paul is talking about, I seem to bring up these texts that I don't want to talk about. Paul is talking about women covering their heads in worship service and orderly worship. And in the middle of that discourse, he just throws in this phrase, and this is how it should be for all these reasons, and because of the angels. And again, the idea is the angels are mediating a kind of order and the law that's there that is giving us some example to follow. And by these false teachers ignoring the law and ignoring the example and the authority of these beings, they are blaspheming the glorious ones. So that's what's going on in verse 8. And then you get another really interesting text. I don't know if you guys are, you just humor me and pretend you're interested. I don't know how interested you are in all these Jewish apocalyptic texts, but I think it's a lot of fun. This business about Michael contending with the devil. So let's just take a couple steps into that rabbit hole, if you'll allow me, because I think it's interesting. So that's based on the first step in understanding what's going on there is based on a passage in Zechariah 3. And I'll just read this. This is Zechariah 3, the first 5 verses. Then he showed me Joshua the high priest standing before the angel of the Lord, and Satan standing at his right hand to accuse him. So you have this judicial context with the angel of the Lord, probably Michael, and Satan standing there also to accuse Joshua. And the Lord said to Satan, "The Lord rebuke you, O Satan." So that's the same phrase you're getting in Jude. The Lord rebuke you, O Satan. The Lord has chosen Jerusalem, rebuke you. The Lord who has chosen Jerusalem, rebuke you. Is this not a brand plucked from the fire? Now Joshua was standing before the angel, clothed with filthy garments. And the angel said to those who were standing before him, "Remove the filthy garments from him." And to him he said, "Behold, I have taken your iniquity away from you, and I will clothe you with pure vestments." And I said, "Let them put a clean turban on his head." So they put a clean turban on his head and clothed him with garments. And the angel of the Lord was standing by. So that's an interesting and beautiful text on its own right. That this idea of the work that God does, removes our filthy garments and reclothes us with clean ones. But for our purposes, we want to think about this judicial context and the role that these two angels play, Satan and the angel of the Lord, in this judicial context, right? So Satan is playing his role. He's wearing his hat as the accuser, and the angel of the Lord is there in defense, right? So again, this is part of their role as mediators of the law. Now, Jude is not explicitly referring to this text in Zechariah. This is probably the original passage that is the source for a second text that's outside of Scripture, and that's called the Testament of Moses, or sometimes called the Assumption of Moses. And in that text, what you see is a similar scene. It's a legal dispute between, again, Satan and Michael. And in this dispute, they're arguing over what to do with the body of Moses. So in Deuteronomy, it says that when Moses is standing before the promised land at the end of his life, he's not allowed to enter the promised land. He dies, and it says in Deuteronomy that God buries him in a place, and no one knows where that place is. what Deuteronomy says. God buries Moses in a place and no one knows where it is. Presumably because nobody wanted Moses's grave to become a kind of shrine of worship or something like that. Right? That's what's there in Deuteronomy. In the testament of Moses, what you have are Satan and Michael arguing about what to do with Moses's body. And again, Satan is wearing his hat as accuser, and Michael is there as in defense. And so Satan is saying, Moses does not deserve an honorable burial because he murdered the Egyptian. So as a murderer, he is not worthy of an honorable burial. So Satan is accusing and trying to deny Satan an honorable burial because he killed the Egyptians. Michael, who's an advocate, does not presume to pronounce a judgment on this slander of Satan, which would be blasphemous on his part because angels as mediators of the law understand that the final judge would be Yahweh, right? So he says of Satan that the Lord should rebuke Satan. Not even that Michael would rebuke Satan, but it's the Lord's role as judge to do this. And so he calls for the Lord to rebuke Satan's slander there. That's the text in the Testament of Moses. And that's what Jude has in mind here, right? When he's talking about the archangel Michael contending with the devil, disputing about the body of Moses. And he does not assume that he has the right to pronounce a blasphemous judgment, but instead says the Lord rebuke you. So that's what's going on there. This is even Michael, who's Moses' advocate, the archangel, doesn't take it on himself to accuse the devil of malice and slander. He appeals to the Lord to rebuke Satan. Michael, on his own authority, could not dismiss the devil's mediation of the law. And that's the key. That the angels in their position have the right to mediate the law. And so Michael understands that and can't dismiss the devil's judgment, or Satan's judgment, I should say. And so he leaves it to the Lord to rebuke, because it's the Lord's position to do that, right? So again, we're deep in the rabbit hole, but what we're seeing here is a kind of order in their role in creation, right? The angels have a place and a role to play, and in this case, they're not judges, and they're not, and likewise, it's the Lord who's the judge. But likewise, they do have a role to play in mediating the law. So when Satan makes his accusation, Michael understands that Satan making that accusation is fitting. Not that the accusation is true or has merit, but Satan, in his place in the order of things, has a right to make the accusation in this judicial context, right? And so Michael understands this order and doesn't circumvent it. And that's as opposed to these antinomian teachers who throw that order to the side. They reject that. So even if the law is given maliciously, as it is with Satan, we don't have the authority to reject it. Likewise, Michael doesn't have the authority to reject Satan in his role as mediator of the law. Right? So that's pretty simple. And he's applying the same principle a few verses later in verses 14 and 15, that it's the Lord that executes judgment. Another thing that's worth mentioning here, that's maybe a little more concrete for us, it's that we're not the ones who overcome the evil one. It is the Lord who overcomes the evil one. And it's his authority that we're relying on. Okay, are we okay? That was,
While we're in the rabbit hole, two interesting things from
Yeah.
that commentary is that the reason that the devil or that Satan claimed the body is because he is the Lord of matter.
yeah.
Oh,
There's some dispute.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some dispute about what's going on there, right? Especially the church fathers saw this as Satan's the Lord of matter. So
Yeah.
when Moses died and you just got meat there,
Yeah.
Satan's got it because he's the Lord of matter. Yeah.
And the other one was, it says there are some people that say that God's people are called the body of Moses. And so is he contending over all of us.
Over the church.
Not just the physical body.
Yeah, I'll just, the commentator, if you're interested, the commentator that I read, I read about 3 or 4, but the commentator I read who I think does the best work here scholarly his name is Richard Balcom. And his work on this is extensive. It's in a series called The Word Biblical Commentary. And he seems to have done his homework as well, better than anybody I read through this. But that's verse 9. Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm not sure how this will play out. I haven't yet read through the rest of Jude, but seems to be a tension in that this section here, you could say the application is that we, like Michael, shouldn't be presuming to judge what's happening. And yet Jude is certainly in his words, judging false teachers and I guess giving permission to the godly leaders of the church or churches he's writing to do the same. So there seems to be a discrepancy there. Or
the way I describe the overall theme of what's happening and what he seems to continue to do is he's going to give examples of places where you see in the created order, particularly among angels, the ways in which they continue to play the role they're supposed to play. And the law has a part to play in that, and the angels as mediators of the law have a part to play in that. The angels, the watchers that fell and were, again, this sort of taking that order and throwing it out by engaging in relationships with human women and teaching them things they should have been teaching them, is another example of tossing that creative order to the side. And we'll see a few more of these examples. He's been focused on angels thus far, but as we continue to move forward, he's gonna look at other examples in creation that we would associate in the physical realm.
Sort of use discernment in who you listen to, but it's up to the Lord to decide.
Yeah.
And to give judgment. The Lord will judge who it is, but be discerning in who you listen to.
Yeah, and another way to think about this is, so you have this order that is set by God. Each of us have our place in that order in a certain way, and we ought not toss that order away. There's a little bit of a danger here, right? So directions one might go with this. So for example, does the order that God sets in creation tell us, does it inform us about things with respect to our sexuality? It's one of the things that Jude's arguing. And does the implication of that with respect to our sexuality have application with respect to same-sex relationships? This is sometimes the way this is argued. I could see one going in all kinds of strange directions like this. Could it establish a kind of caste system that's there, right? Again, order, the I'm careful to use the word order and not use the word hierarchy, right? Because they're not the same, but could a kind of caste system or a patriarchy be something that one advocates for on the basis of some of the things that are being suggested here? Because again, the word that's used here are words like authority and the glorious ones, as if they have a kind of exalted role that likewise we don't have the right to toss aside. Right? So how we understand the text and what we do with it is still complicated, even if we understand what's being said here. How it's applied is still complicated. But other thoughts or comments, things people want to say? Because God knows I need help with it. Yeah.
Actually, just had one small question. Any difference between false teachers and blasphemers? Because it uses false teaching language, and then there's that verse 8 or 9, something that says, blaspheme the glorious.
So by ignoring what they have to say, that is how you're blaspheming them. By tossing out the example they set and the way in which they honor what they're supposed to be doing is the way in which you're blaspheming them. But these folks, it's important to see, they're not just, these false teachers, again, aren't just living in a certain way. It's not just their libertine lifestyle that's the problem. It's that they're teaching, right? So they're playing a role in teaching. But I don't know if I can draw a really clear and explicit line between the blaspheming and the teaching. I suppose the blaspheming in the sense that you don't respect the authority is a prerequisite to the false teaching, right?
Yeah, when Jesus is asked about forgivable, unforgivable sins, the only thing he says is unforgivable is blasphemy against the Holy Spirit. And I'm not sure we fully understand what that means, but it seems, the interpretation I've heard is seeing something that clearly is of God and saying, no, that's not of God. So in some way, denial or replacement of God or something.
That might be a good segue, because he says, when you keep going, verse 10, but these people blaspheme all that they do not understand, and they're destroyed by all that they, like unreasoning animals, understand instinctively. I'm going to get to where you were, Tim. So that's pretty, I think, pretty straightforward. They blaspheme what they don't understand, and they are like unreasoning animals. So they understand through dream-like visions. They understand instinctively, as opposed to understanding with reason. They don't understand the role of angels as ministers of the divine lawgiver. But they understand instinctively, that is with the flesh, like animals, without reason, without spiritual insight, as those that are not image bearers. So they're even, if you have a kind of order where the angels provide a certain kind of example, and you would want to follow the example of the angels, they actually go in the opposite direction toward beings that are not image bearers, the animals, in their practice of who they're going to follow. And the animals, unlike what we would expect of the angels, don't have spiritual insight. They don't reason. The animals operate purely on instinct and the flesh and the passions. So I have a note that it's interesting the way in which the word passion has evolved in its use, right? So when you come across the word passion in the ancient world, it tends to have a negative connotation to it. To follow your passions is a negative thing. Whereas in our contemporary context, when you hear follow your passion, it's used in a positive positive way. So,
Different passion.
yeah, yeah. As in follow your dreams, follow what you love. But that's not what Jude is suggesting. I think we're going to come across that phrase a little later in the text. But Tim, back to your comment, he's going to use 3 more examples here in verse 11. These examples are a little more straightforward than the examples he's used so far, but at least they're ones that are in the canon. He says, "Woe to them, for they walked in the way of Cain and abandoned themselves for the sake of gain to Balaam's error and perished in Korah's rebellion." So 3 more examples: Cain, Balaam, and in Korah's rebellion. Let's just say Jude was a reader, right? So he spent his time in these texts. So what's the way of Cain? Well, of course, Cain's a murderer, right? That's the one thing we understand. But to Jews, he's the archetypal false teacher. But in his action, he entices others to sin. And in that sense, he is likewise a teacher. And in the Jerusalem Targum, which is just another Jewish text, ancient Jewish text, he's arguing with Abel about God's acceptance of Abel's offering. And he says, and this is probably what Jude has in mind, Cain says, God does not govern justly. He says, this is a quote, "There is no judgment, there is no judge, there is no other world, there is no gift of good reward for the just, there is no punishment for the wicked." So in this sense, he's a false teacher, right? And in that sense, a blasphemer of what God has set up in the law. So I don't know if that's helpful too, but that's it, to a Jewish reader of this, they would see those connections to Cain pretty immediately. So it's that sense in which Cain is a false teacher, denying that the law and that God's order exists. And these false teachers think that God won't judge their immorality, right? So that's your first example. And I think I can get through these next 2 somewhat quickly. Balaam is this story about Balak is a Moabite king, and he fears the Jews who are camping outside of his kingdom. He says, "This horde will now lick us up, and all is around us as the ox licks up the grass." And he summons Balaam to try to curse Israel. And I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole. You can read it in Numbers 22. He's got a talking donkey who can see an angel that he doesn't see. And there's a conversation that goes on there. But the key, what is Balaam's error? Balaam advises Balak to entice Israel to sin. For us, that's the key. So Balaam is suggesting to this king Balak that he should entice Israel to sin. And in the context of Jude, that's what Jude is referring to. He's suggesting that Balaam should tell Balak to convince Israel to intermarry, for example, with the Canaanite women. And in doing so is enticing them to sin. So that's his error. That's Balaam's error. And then finally, Korah's rebellion. This is a group, while Israel is wandering the desert, this is a group, Korah, Dathan, Abiram, this is also in the book of Numbers, they rebel against Moses and the earth swallows them up. But again, what they're trying to do there, their rebellion against Moses, is they tell the Israelites that the law that Moses gave them was not from heaven, that it came strictly from Moses. So that the theme with all of these is you've got these figures enticing God's people to sin, enticing God's people to do what they ought not be doing. Right? They have a kind of position of authority, and they're in a position of teaching, but they're rejecting the order and the relationship that God has there. So they, in that case, they're enticing, it's in number 16, 250 other people to rebel against Moses. That's there. So they're the three examples that he's referring to. So that might be a good place to stop and let you ask any questions or think through. That leaves us a lot of work to do next week, but I think I don't think we'll have to go quite as far into the extra biblical canon next week, although the very next verse he quotes something from the book of Enoch. But thoughts or comments that you're seeing here, insights we might draw?
Just one back on 8 in terms of their challenge. It says that they take away the authority of government and slander them. And it's a greater matter to despise government than the governors. That is to say, the matter itself than the persons. A lot of that goes on these days.
Yeah. Read that line again, Frank.
Is that it's a greater matter to despise government than the governors. That is to say, the matter itself than the persons.
Yeah. That is a contemporary.
What is
What
that
do you
from?
think?
Geneva Bible, 1587.
We've got hearing number 3 today, I think,
Yeah.
right?
What do you think Jude would say about the book, The Killer Angels, which is all about Gettysburg, where 40,000 people died, and there were people fighting to remove slavery, and there was an awful lot of rebuking done by us. And I just don't know, when you send soldiers off to war, you're asking them to do things that we're the angels, good angels. I just don't know. Is it okay for angels to kill? Because I think sometimes we're placed in that position where we're asked to do that. And would he kind of...
I think we misunderstand God's desire for humans in war. I mean, the Germans in World War I, they had "God is with us" on their belt buckles. They all thought that this was a holy war and that God was behind them. And I think we misunderstand sometimes the motivations and the justifications behind war. There's a lot of debate in recent years about what is a just war. Is there such a thing? I think we just have to be really careful. We're not angels.
On the other hand, we're called as Christians and as a community, Christian community, we're called to make judgments. I have in mind, I think it's Matthew 18, where Jesus goes into great detail about not ignoring sin within the community, and then admonishes us to go 2 by 2 or take another elder with us to deal with and maintain order within our Christian society. And that's enough of a challenge for me to bring God's word and God's presence into a situation that we think is inimical to order and to God's purposes.
Yeah, Scott and Ted, as you were talking, Scott, you were referring to, I think you put it, be careful. We have to be careful, right? There's discernment language there when we think about the right contexts in which to use force, right? again, this word discernment is flashing in front of my mind as I think about it. But 1 Corinthians 13, which is this love chapter that Paul is using, is we read it at weddings a lot, but he's been speaking about divisions within the church there, and he lists he gives this list of gifts, that spiritual gifts that are held by members of the body, speaking of tongues of men and angels, prophetic powers, understanding of mysteries and all knowledge and all faith, so as to move mountains. If you give away all you have and deliver up your body to be burned. So you're seeing things like discernment, selflessness there, other spiritual gifts, prophecy, and all of those are put below love. So if you have all these things, but you don't have love within them, you're, as he says, a clanging cymbal, right? Or you gain nothing, or I am nothing. That's the contrast he makes there. So all of these things sit within a context of love that's there. And if I have to summarize what love looks like in the New Testament, you should be really worried about this when I summarize what love looks like in the New Testament in a sentence. But it seems to me the heart of that is the cross. So denying of self and sacrifice. I don't know that it's aggression, but it seems to me that the denial of self and dying is the posture that's being advocated for there. And I don't know what that looks like when you have, I don't remember which pope it was. The pope was being asked in an interview, it might have been Benedict or it might have been Francis, I'm not sure, was being asked about ISIS and whether, for example, the US and its allies ought to send troops to the Middle East to stop what was going on with ISIS. And his response there was, what ISIS is doing needs to be stopped. And he was very vague, I think intentionally, about the language. He just says that what's going on there needs to be stopped. And I like how vague he was in the answer, suggesting that there's a moment in which force may be necessary, but only insofar as it stops the evil and the aggression and the violence that was taking place. That seems to be language that helps transcend kind of the geopolitical motivations that are there, and puts the highest value on human life and the ending of violence versus, I don't know, political structures and they're vying for power with one another. I may be giving him too much credit, but
that's very consistent with what Francis recently called on Russia to stop their invasion.
That's a huge rabbit hole. I don't know if we want to go down, but it's, also challenges the wing of the church that's the nonviolent, that says there's no place, that there is no such thing as a just war, that we have to trust in God's providence. And I have a hard time, whether it's Ukraine or ISIS or World War II or different conflicts that have a lot of other layers to it, but seem to be a good versus evil, that we're called to stop the evil.
Yeah, it's interesting though that he didn't specify how to stop it.
We don't talk about Vietnam were we the evil ones in that war, or were we really fighting evil? It gets murky, but we respond to our governments telling us we're sending you off to war because we've decided that's what we're going to do.
Just send the 18-year-olds and not the 40-year-olds making the decisions.
It was interesting having read biographies of Robert E. Lee, and Eisenhower. And they both led armies. Eisenhower, directed the largest invasion that ever took place. Yet they hated the concept of war. They knew these were things that had to be done. And after he was president, he had his problems, but he did so much to avoid escalating future conflicts that it put him in a hard position a lot of times, where all his advisors were saying, we have to ramp up, and he was, no. And also the atom bomb had been developed, and here he was trying to keep a lid on it ever being used again. Interesting conflicts that those leaders got into in these situations.
I just finished a biography about Oppenheimer, and he and those that were involved in the Manhattan Project most intimately really felt like they were racing against the Nazis to get the bomb finished, and before it was finished, Germany essentially surrendered, and the attention of the Allies went to the Pacific. And some of those in the Manhattan Project, and Oppenheimer really wrestled with this, asked whether they should just stop at that point, whether to leave it alone. And for various complicated reasons, they kept development moving. But the physicists the engineers all really understood what it was that they were building in pretty profound ways, maybe more so than the politicians did. And he was advocating all through it that they needed to get an international community comprised primarily of scientists, and share the information with everybody, and have a kind of body that would police and oversee this all over the world, that would be sure that no nation ever used this technology to
But they all had access to it, so no one had an advantage.
Yeah.
Take away the advantage of it. Yeah.
There's a movie being made of that book, I think, Walt, and it's being filmed out at Ghost Ranch, Doug, where Julie and David got married. In fact, they just finished filming, and that'll be, I don't know, 2023, it'll come out. I think it's an important story to tell, for sure.
This biography was called America's Prometheus or something like that, or American Prometheus. That's the title of the biography.
Suggestive. We should close this in prayer.
Let's close in prayer. So we see through a glass darkly, and so as we wrestle with these questions, oh Lord, grant us humility and keep us in step with the Spirit in spite of ourselves. Grant us wisdom, and may all we do be saturated in love as you understand it, thinking of our cross daily in the name of Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.